Now, why do fewer than 1 in 10 Londoners leaving prison find employment after 6 weeks? The capital has one of the lowest rates of post-prison employment of any English region. Aggie Chambra reports.
My whole life I felt like I was going around in circles, innit? And it was like a never-ending roundabout, and I had to get off on an exit somewhere.
Serg was released from a 2.5-year prison sentence at the height of the pandemic.
It's my second time coming out of prison. My first time was in 2010. I was young and I didn't know, I had no guidance, no direction.
But this time, guidance is coming from a charity mentor, and he's working 2 jobs and starting a business.
We know that we've had a messed up past, but it doesn't mean that we can't turn it around and have a bright future. I'm not saying that is easy. I'm not saying the road to success is a straight and narrow one. It literally is a bumpy ride. There's going to be a lot of obstacles, but if you put that same energy into what you're doing on the roads, into the positive aspect, trust me, you will get somewhere.
Serg has managed to overcome some of the barriers facing him, but for many people leaving prison in London, the odds often feel stacked against them. And with the pandemic, that's only getting worse. Serg worked with London-based mentoring charity Switchback, who he says helped him turn his life around. Exclusive new data from the charity shows a significant rise in barriers to work faced by young prison leavers. Among 18 to 30-year-olds supported by the charity in 2020, 46% were released with no bank account, up from 33% the year before. 65% were released homeless, up from 42% the year before, and 40% had never worked before.
What we're seeing is people being released not only homeless, but with just £46, which is the amount people get at the gate, and it's been the same since 1996. It's no wonder that people are driven straight back towards crime and reoffending. It really doesn't serve anyone, and certainly doesn't serve victims. All it does is create more crime and more victims and communities that are less safe in the future.
For those who've never worked before, this bakery in East London is a lifeline. It offers work experience and placements to prison leavers. Max Tobias co-founded Dusty Knuckles 6 years ago, and so far they've trained and employed around 20 prison leavers.
We've got guys here whose lives have completely changed, who, when we first met them, were engaged in all kinds of stuff, helping people to see themselves differently and helping people to believe that there can be a different future for them and making that route to it tangible.
So how can we help people gain employment after prison?
We know that it's better to go out with clear plans and a clear job offer. We know that that is really helpful in terms of reducing reoffending in the long term. But actually, there are lots of things that potentially get in the way. Often, the thing that really delivers successful resettlement is that support by a person through the gate. Who can just help you navigate some of the things that you need to do, but are just a bit too, quite complicated to get sorted. And that has always been a challenge. You can't give everybody a person.
The journey from behind bars to building a new life will never be easy, but experts in the sector agree it takes real support to give people a real second chance.
Well, our reporter Aggie Chambra put that statistic of only 1 in 10 ex-offenders in London finding employment in the 6-week period after their release to the former Minister for Prisons, Anne Widdecombe.
It doesn't surprise me, particularly in big cities. That is not at all surprising. People come out of prison and they're in a milieu in which it's very, very competitive indeed, and the job market is competitive. And it's seriously not easy. So that doesn't really surprise me at all. But it is an indictment of the system. The moment, of course, one of the things you're going to run up against is public resentment. When it comes to prisoners actually getting employment, they're perfectly happy about it when, as I say, unemployment is low. But when unemployment is high, there's quite a measurable resentment there. When people say, look, I've kept the law all my life, I'm now out of work, I should get priority. But what we've got to remember is that if you want to protect the public, then it's crucial that the person who comes out of prison has a chance of living a normal life. And that means somewhere to live, somewhere to work, family contact.
And Widdecombe there. Well, Stephen, according to the Ministry of Justice, the cost of keeping someone in prison is around £40,000 a year. Unless they're a danger to others, surely it's not right that they're not allowed out and given sufficient support to rehabilitate.
I think your clip was showing and focusing quite clearly on making sure that people get the access to jobs, the access to training, the access, crucially, to a support network when they come out. And there are some schemes that are running across London, the community payback scheme that's run by the community rehabilitation company. But what we want to see is more of them, because actually it's a job which is more to do about training, opportunity and sustainable stops reoffending. So I agree with you. And I'm glad that actually this Lord Chancellor and the previous Lord Chancellor both are concentrating on ensuring that we actually put more into rehabilitation. I'm not saying we do enough, but we certainly need to do more because it's for the benefit of everybody. The old probation service used to have reoffending rates of something over 65%. That's appalling. It doesn't give people the chance when they've committed a crime to come out of prison and restructure their lives. So we want to actually, I hope that the Lord Chancellor will also look at not just at working alongside charities and community groups to put these community payback schemes in place, but speak to a lot more large employers as we go through some of the changes that are planned for the probation system, to get them on board to offer opportunities to ex-prisoners.
Rushanara Tony Blair famously, of course, said he would be tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime. Is this about political parties of all stripes actually wanting to be perceived to be taking a tough stance on prisons?
Well, look, the issue is that we're spending, as you said, over £40,000 a year on the per person, keeping them in prison. And I think what successive governments have struggled with is redirecting more funding to the rehabilitation part. I think there's much more consensus about needing to do that across all three of us today, as you can see, around putting investment into support when people leave the system, housing support. Switchback in my constituency does excellent work, housing support, mentoring, employment opportunities. But you kind of need to create those opportunities and put large-scale investment into that aspect so that you cut down reoffending. It's actually not as complex as it's made out, but it requires political will and leadership to put money into the support schemes, including, of course, drugs action teams. They've faced huge cuts in constituencies like mine, mental health support, all of which is required if you want to stop people reoffending, particularly young people who are reoffending. And the final thing I'd say is about employment. We've got very rising levels of unemployment because of COVID. So you have to create, I would say, an intermediate labour market like you saw in the programme, where there's training opportunities and employment so that those who've reoffended can find a pathway back into work. And that requires working with employers and giving them some subsidies as well to make that happen.
So do you share Anne Widdecombe's worries that the public won't look kindly on giving jobs or promoting people who are from prison, who've left prison, perhaps, you know, over other people who are also struggling to find work?
I think that's a divisive narrative, actually. What the public want is to be able to be safe, and they want the criminal justice system to work. And we need more confidence in the system. The way to get public confidence in the system is to cut reoffending rates. And over the last decade, what we've seen is cuts in the services that actually reduce reoffending. And that's what Anne Widdecombe's government and the Stevens government need to work on, and they haven't. They've said some things that are acceptable. Stevens said that, but the resources need to be in there in the rehabilitation part rather than wasting more money, keeping people locked up, but then continuing to see rising levels of reoffending. That's not a good use of public money. We need to do both. We need to be tough on crime and the causes.
Okay, thank you, Rushanara.